Hello, everybody. Today, we will tell a story of a poor girl who moonlights as a sleeping beauty. Do not need to do anything about it. Just need to get a good night's sleep, wake up with no memory of what happened and get paid a lot of money. Lucy, our heroine, is very beautiful. She has long blonde hair and tiny, delicate features. The most striking thing about her was her fair white skin, who was just like a delicate doll. Lucy, on the other hand, was a very poor college girl who had gone to the university with student loans. Lucy's mother was addicted to alcohol and her boyfriend was head over heels addicted to drugs. No way. Lucy had to work 3 jobs a day just to get by the normal life, not only waitressing in the cafeteria, but also working in the photocopying room. After the work, she also worked as a lab rat. The Lucy has seen all the ups and downs of life under all the stress. Day after day, Lucy gradually lowered her bottom line. She began to go to all sorts of drunken places. After all, she could earn a lot more here than she could outside. Lucy was beautiful just the way she was. Therefore, as soon as she appeared, she was sought after by many men. She quickly decided whom to spend the night with. But Lucy, who had tried her best to live her life, still lived very hard. After all, life won't treat you better for your hard work. Lucy not only had to deal with the stresses of life every day, but also under the pressure of her own mother, and the mean landlord kept asking for rent every day. Oh, my God, what a miserable little beauty she is. The only consolation for Lucy was her sickly boyfriend, who was unable to do any work every day. I wondered what Lucy liked about her boyfriend. Was he tall, or was he handsome, or was he smoking and taking drugs? Or maybe Lucy was overwhelmed by the stress of her life and she just released herself. With her boyfriend, the Lucy also had a busy life. She came to her boyfriend's house and was busy cleaning. However, it was amazing that the love between Lucy and her boyfriend was really pure. But now they are only holding hands with each other. Or maybe Lucy was just looking for a spiritual love. One day Lucy got a job as a lingerie waitress. This work was a bit of no sense of moral, but it's easy and it pays well. Of course, Lucy liked it very much. This work, how should I put it? She had a similar work style to our Moonlit Bunny Ranch, a procuress with a group of young girls. But the guests here were all elites from all walks of life. The work was very relaxing and free, and the pay was satisfied. You could chat and meet people here. In addition, you could also overdo something a little. But this procuress was a little plausible in a way. She had her own vision for beautiful things, and she genuinely cared about girls. The procuress ordered Lucy to take off her clothes and check her body. It was a pleasure to look at Lucy's figure. She's body had no tattoos, no scars, with healthy limbs and fair shiny skin. The procuress appreciated Lucy and told Lucy that this job was not her career. Just make some money and pay off her student loans. She also told Lucy that Lucy had the great possibility of promotion, and she guessed Lucy would be able to pay off the loan soon. There was another rule of the procuress, that they could only overdo something a little, but not over the top too far. Sex is absolutely forbidden. The procuress told Lucy that a girl's body was a temple, but Lucy lost herself and replied, "My body is not a temple at all." Since then, Lucy's lingerie reception began. The procuress arranged a series of body care programs for Lucy to make Lucy's body look more perfect. When dusk had fallen, Lucy started working. Lucy, working for the first time, was very reserved. She looked east, west, and didn't dare to make a sound to lest something go wrong, which was gonna lose her high-paying job. But I had to say it was a nice job. The first day, Lucy earned a generous salary. Lucy lit a cigarette. When she looked at the tip, she pulled out one of the bills, lit and burned it. I had nothing to say. You could be wasting money on me. You can't just burn it. Lucy became more and more comfortable with this job after she earned the money. She did not care much about the little hand that reached unexpectedly from the guests at all. She began losing herself in the spoiled life and having access to all kinds of pickup joints. But Lucy was still very confused and longed to settle down. In her heart of hearts, she asked her boyfriend, "Hey, honey, will you marry me?" Her boyfriend told Lucy without looking back, "Sure." Her boyfriend's response made Lucy very happy. Lucy tried to send her boyfriend to the drug rehabilitation center when she saw her boyfriend's increasingly haggard face. After all, she was rich now, but her boyfriend said he could most probably not get over it. He didn't want to waste his last days in rehab. Lucy was in silent tears, but she could do nothing. Shortly afterwards, Lucy got a phone call. The procuress told Lucy that she had great capacity for work and now she could get a promotion. Making money meant a great deal to Lucy. She was happy, but also she felt a little nervous. After all, people were always afraid of the unknown. The driver took her to a large, remote villa. Lucy was going to start her new job to be a sleeping beauty. As she entered the villa, she saw a girl being supported from behind got into the car. Lucy stared at the girl for a moment. She was a little timid. Just then the procuress came to pick up Lucy. She saw that Lucy was a little tired, so she asked Lucy thoughtfully to take a shower to relax herself. Then the procuress mixed a cup of sleeping tea for Lucy. Lucy's job now was to drink this tea and woke up in a big, fancy bed for a few hours. During this time Lucy would be unconscious and had no memories after waking up. Indeed, Lucy was quite a sleeping beauty. What the fair skin and the loose hair. After Lucy was asleep, the procuress took along a rich man with white hair. The guest seemed preoccupied and had a unique perspective on life. He came here, but he didn't do anything to Lucy. However, he told the procuress a story about fracture. The main point of this story was to sigh with emotion that his life was not interesting. He always missed his past life when he was getting older. Although he had become a successful person, his life didn't mean much anymore, as his bones have been broken. It was a melancholy little story told by the rich, as if we were at the realistic, immersive effect of the scene. Then the procuress went out and left time for the rich man. Then the rich man took off his clothes expertly and lay down in bed with Lucy in his arms for the night. The next day, when Lucy woke up, the guests had already gone and she had no idea what was going on. The work of the sleeping beauty was to let the girls sleep smoothly, and then the procuress took along with her guests to enjoy the beauty. Even so, the procuress was very principled. Even though she was promoted, guests were still not allowed to have sex with little girls. The sleeping beauty guests were usually elderly and wealthy. They enjoyed the young bodies for all sorts of reasons. When Lucy got home, she was asked by the landlord to press for payment of rental before her, but has not been hot yet. Originally, Lucy has been defaulting her rent for a long time that the landlord just kicked her out, but Lucy didn't take it seriously. After all, I was rich now and I didn't want to live in your shanty at all. Lucy immediately went to the agent and asked for a good house without observing. Lucy suddenly realized that her habit of sleeping naked all the time seems very insecure. When she slept in her new house at night, at last, Lucy got up, found her clothes and put them on before she went back to bed again. But it cost her a lot of money to rent the house. Lucy was now poor again, so she asked her procuress to keep an eye on more works for her. This work has affected her other part-time jobs. This day, Lucy was being a white mouse for an experiment, but the procuress called to Lucy that the guest had already come. Lucy immediately hurried to stop the experiment to get there. Apparently, the doctor got angry and cursed Lucy a few times. Lucy's second guest of the Sleeping Beauty's job was bald. The bald guy didn't have the same good quality of the first rich guy. He burned Lucy behind her ear with a cigarette to check if she was asleep. The old man's body has been out of shape and could hardly move. Seeing Lucy's beautiful, young body, the old man desired but could not able to enjoy it. So he just abused on Lucy, kissed and caressed her. The next day Lucy found herself injured behind her ear. She began to put doubts in her mind about the job that she wondered whether she should spoil her body like this. But the pressure of life did not give Lucy too much time to think about it. The boyfriend called Lucy and his condition now seemed one of great prostration. Lucy madly ran out of the school to her boyfriend's house. The boyfriend let Lucy undress her clothes and he held his lovely girl in his arms. They spent one last sweet moment together until he died. But Lucy didn't tell anyone about it. Then the boyfriend's brother discovered his brother's body 2 weeks later. At her boyfriend's funeral, a friend was talking to Lucy about how sorry he was for her boyfriend's death. But Lucy suddenly asked him, "Will you marry me?" The friend was very surprised, cursed Lucy a few words and turned away. But Lucy didn't respond much to the abuse. Her only consolation was gone because of the death of her boyfriend. She seemed desperate to hold on to something to make her feel smooth, steady and she could count on. But apparently, she was on her own. Lucy got fired because she wasn't working hard and she had to continue being the sleeping beauty. The third guest wore a long pigtail. He tried to pick Lucy up, but he didn't realize he was too old to pick up Lucy and even sprained his waist. Though she didn't feel anything after she woke up, she was still mind the job of sleeping beauty. She bought a monitor to observe what happened when she had fell asleep. Then she asked her procuress what happened after she had fell asleep, but the procuress disagreed with it. This was her regulation that she could not expose the privacy of her guests. This guest was the glum old man telling a story. At the first time, he had already made the decision to die. He felt that his life had no significance at all, so he decided to die beside the most delicate body at the last moment. The next morning the procuress came and drew back the curtains. She checked for breathing of the rich man and found that he had died with serenity. Unexpectedly, however, Lucy did not wake up. The procuress was so frightened that she hastened to climb on the bed and gave Lucy mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Luckily, Lucy was nothing serious, but just passed out. She saw the old dead body at her side and finally spontaneously started to break down and wept. She finally woke up and faced up to her body. Lucy didn't continue to immerse in numbness. The reality she kept ignoring and the fear she didn't dare to face finally came to her. The thing that made her face up to it was not the sunshine or the warmth, but the aged corpse. Did she finally get a new lease on life? We would never know about it, but she must realize that her life was so terrible now. The story ended. Let us meet at the comments section.